Okay, so changing topic for a bit. Let's just revisit some reading skills. I've had some feedback that we need to, as we prepare students to increase their confidence with reading both articles and books, it might be good to include a bit of material. And this is going to be placed in the section which is the section of the course which is introductory comments. We're going to be talking about reading articles and reading books, and they're going to be put in at the end of some content where we're talking about how to use computers and mobile phones and the internet not as toys but as tools. So it's possible that you have never been taught about how to read a journal article. Maybe you assume that any and every article and book that you are given to read, the only legitimate way to do this is by starting on the first page and reading every word and line from the first to the last. And my main objective is to say that there are some articles where it's important to do that, but sometimes we need to just learn how to navigate around articles. The type of articles we read depends on whether we're a physical scientist, whether we are a sociologist or an anthropologist or a historian, a psychologist, whether we're quantitative data specialists or more qualitative. But there are family resemblances right across the differences. In anthropology, our articles tend to be longer, more text, a few pictures. Others have graphs and all the rest, but there are family resemblances. Okay, so here are just some, this is not my own material. I got this off a website. You'll see the reference for the graphic that I'm going to be using to talk about these issues at the bottom there. And so that's an important detail. So let's go to full screen now. And we're going to be just going through, not in order from A to B, from top to bottom, but we're going to be looking at about how we read a scholarly article. In other words, an article that appears in an academic, a peer-reviewed academic journal. And although the first thing you read is at the top, the second most important thing you read is not at the top. So we're going to be jumping around a bit. And the first thing that you do when you are reading an article, when you are looking what to read, is that you read something called an abstract. And the abstract will contain the main points, the main argument, and the abstract will almost always include a list of key words. And they will be key words that you will be becoming familiar with as you begin to get to know your area of study more and more. So the first thing that you read is the abstract, which is the summary of the entire article. The second thing that you read is the conclusion. So the second thing is almost the last thing. And this conclusion will state the findings and the results and the way in which their position may differ from an opponent, an analytical adversary. So after reading the abstract, you read the conclusion, and you actually you pop back and you actually can skim through the keywords and some other things as well. But after you've done the conclusion, a good thing to do is to also look at the authors. Have a look at them. Where is their institution? Where are they affiliated? How many co-authors are there? And it takes a while for you to understand who the big names in your field are, but getting to know names is a very important skill when you are learning scholarship, but you are learning how to discern about the quality of the articles that you are reading. This takes time. Going back to my point that you don't start from the first page and read to the end, it's suggested here that one of the things that you might need to do is you might need to then, after you've looked at the authors, you go and look at the references. Almost always the first thing that one does when you are doing a literature study for a thesis is you do a literature review. And by far the best way to do a literature review is you find recently published articles and you look at the bibliography, and that is the way that you begin to compile your own list of references that will demonstrate to your supervisors that you have done your reading. And so references are the next thing you should be reading. And then going back up the top, begin to read the introduction, which will give the context and the overview and the argument of the paper. It might also include a literature review and details about methodology. So there are, depending on the field, and I think that this is more relevant for quantitative studies and for the hard sciences. There is results, but those of us who are qualitative data collection specialists and such as anthropologists, the results are in interviews and perceptions and in observations. And then after that, there is almost always a discussion. It mightn't be called a discussion if it was an anthropological journal. It would just be one long mixing up of introducing data and then discussing and analysing it. And so that is one of the ways that you can read an article. And so I hope that you've enjoyed that. Don't go away, because we're just going to carry on, and we're going to be talking a bit about more about reading. And the reason for me mentioning this is that you would have noticed, I hope by now, that on the Google Drive there is a folder with some audios, and they include some audios of entire books. They are in chapters, but this is, I've done this for a number of reasons. The first reason is that this is an experimental electronic course, and I want to experiment with providing audio versions of electronic books so that you could see what it might be like to turn on an audio as you are flicking through the pages. But there are some very interesting ways that listening can help us as we read. So let's go to full screen. Let's go to full screen now, and let's have a look at Briefly, we're going to look at this, and then we're going to be talking about how to read a book. But there are a number of ways that hearing something helps our literacy. There are a number of ways. It increases when we hear words spoken to us. If English is not your first language, when we hear words spoken to us, it increases our reading accuracy. For most people, not all, but for most people, your comprehension is best, is easiest when people are talking to you. But most, not all, but most people have a lower comprehension when you are just reading without hearing anything. And so it increases the accuracy of our reading when we hear it, and it increases the comprehension. It is a very, very good way of expanding our vocabulary. Now, this is only going to be true if we pause the audio when we come across a word that we don't understand. And what do? We copy. We've got an audio file on. We've got the PDF open. What do? We copy the word from the PDF. We put it into our dictionary. We put it into some web-based dictionary or a dictionary on our computer. And if we immediately translate that word, and if we copy that into a memo, a list of words that we come across, if we do that immediately when we are reading, and it doesn't need to take more than a few seconds, and especially if we make a list that we can visit at the end of every day and every week, this will increase our vocab. It improves our fluency. It expands our vocabulary. 85% of what we learn by listening. Reading is important, but use the technology that you have not as toys, but as tools. Not only does it increase, and not only that, but it also increases our motivation to read if we can hear also what we are reading. These are things that I hope you will take seriously and consider doing, and having taken them seriously, you will consider doing things just a bit differently. Okay, so let's take a pause and we'll see you again soon.